Special good evening, Trinidad and Tobago. Welcome to the special edition of Plain Talk. Tonight we're going to be dealing with the further restrictions that was released. I think it was released today. I'm joined tonight by Dr. Kirk Megu, and for Government Minister Devan Maraj. And I think that we need to discuss it. I know we're having some kind of technical difficulties in the background. We apologize to you for that. Now we're available on the YouTube link. We have a PEP YouTube link, so that you'll be getting that as well shortly. Those of you who are on the broadcast, on the WhatsApp broadcast, if you get it, share it with everybody. Good evening, Kirk Megu. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, Devant Maraj.
Good evening. Good evening.
Kirk, you wanted to announce something before we started?
Yeah, I have a couple of things coming up next week that I think your listeners would be interested in. One is that I'm starting a series of going over my book here. Let me pull it up. Politics and
Charging for advertising.
What's that, Devant?
Sorry?
Charging for advertising.
Yeah, that's what
I hear it. At least calculating the total in the back there.
Yeah, but basically, well, it's so that's the political history of Trinidad and Tobago from our first elections. That goes up to 2002, and it gives us a background to understand how the parties developed, how, you know, and so I'm going to be doing that from next Saturday, and that's a long series I'll be doing so that we understand the history of the political parties, the political issues, etc., etc. So I wanted to say that, and then also there's something else. You may know that I do podcasts internationally, and I've been linking up with political movements all over the world. And with this COVID crisis, there's a major conference happening on April 25th on Saturday about moving forward on reimagining politics, economics, society, etc. And I'll be representing the Caribbean area, and I will be giving a presentation there. So just,
congratulations. I just want to say that because you announced this on this show, myself, Satish, and Devon, we expecting autograph copies, and we have to.
Yeah, definitely.
Devan Maharaj, bring us into this conversation because there's now further restrictions, and wait, I am supposed to be bringing Philip Franco into this conversation. So Devan, you could start it off, and let me get Philip Franco in.
Today, we were surprised once again when the regulations for the public health ordinance was amended again for, I don't know, about the fifth time or so, where the population was advised that now hardwares would only be open Monday, Thursday, and Saturday from 8 to 12. And in the letter, the press release, it indicated that the Prime Minister had consultation with the Minister of Health, who is really claimed to fame he's a druggist. You have a drugstore and so on, right? He's not a medical doctor. I don't know his.
I apologize. I just want to bring Philip Franco in. Philip, you describe again for me what exactly it is your doctorate is in.
I'm a naturopathic doctor and a medical herbalist.
Are you all hearing Philip good, Devan, Kirk?
Yes, I'm hearing him fine.
All right, so we apologize. So Philip, we're going straight forward. You will hear on my end here. You could tune in on Facebook. We have you on a call in. Devan, go back to what you're saying, and I apologize for that.
I mean, I find it amazing. It is almost government by ad hocism that yesterday, I think it was Thursday evening, the regulation was amended in order to deal with a matter in court. 2 days before that, it was amended. It was done erroneously before that. And nobody is taking responsibility for the errors that first occurred. One would assume that the Attorney General would take paternity and responsibility for the errors in the public health ordinance regulations that was first announced. I mean, it was almost glossed over, and it had to be corrected subsequently to that. Then when matters are brought before the courts legitimately and lawfully by citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, the government run back in the dead of night, pass new regulations and come back and undermine the court's jurisdiction in this on not one but two occasions. And now we have to be surprised what it is that prompted this great consultation between Keith Rowley and Terence Dial Singh to discuss about hardware stores. We are seeing, on Facebook and so on, for those of us who are restricted to home, lines outside banks and hardware, not hardware, and supermarkets, and even people giving out hampers. There are lines, but we have not
Devon,
been inundated with lines outside hardwares.
I
Now,
spoke to
given
a
the fact,
senior, I spoke to a
let
senior
me, let
medical
me,
professional. I just
let me
want to give
finish
you
the
this. I
point.
spoke,
Uh,
yeah, make your point. Go ahead, go ahead.
Given the fact that the government admitted in its daily press propaganda, and you have to call it that with Rhoda Barrett present there, that there is no community spread, right? Accepting what they're saying is true, that there's no community spread, then why is the need to restrict only the hardware stores and hardware institution from on 3 days a week for 2-3 hours? Wouldn't that have a consequential impact of increasing the amount of customers on those days that they're open, as opposed to letting them be open for 6 or 7 days a week with a longer opening hours? So this way, that not all the patrons would be crammed into 2 hours. And then how profitable would it be for hardware owners themselves to make this thing viable? Because you have to mobilize staff, and the big items is where they get their profits in terms of bricks and cement and so on. So to what end it is to their advantage to mobilize trucks and transport drivers and things? Hardware dealers might say, listen, it might be just worth it for me just to keep the thing closed, and look at the inconvenience that may have on the community that is already frustrated with this stay-at-home measure, which is done by a political announcement in a press briefing and no force of law.
Devon, I want to say, I spoke to a health professional today. And Kirk, you might want to weigh in on this. Philip Franco is on the line for those who just joined us. Um, the One of the points that he raised, and is a critical point, we have people quarantined all over a month now, and it starts to affect your mental health. And things that you could do around the house, your little hardware projects and your little fix up this and fix up that, is a good way to keep people occupied and actually stimulated. Why, of all the things, you're going to shut down? You're going to shut down hardware. I don't get it. It's not like people are out there shopping because they have nothing to do and we're in a quarantine, so I'm going to go and buy some gravel and some razor wire. If somebody goes to hardware, it's because they're doing a project, so they're occupied and they're busy. It's adding equity to the state at every step of the way. This is such a ridiculous situation, and the question I want to ask is this. Our curve is flat. Our curve is
Yeah.
flat. We've had no new cases for an entire week, despite packing 10,000 people inside the store without any mask, without any gloves, jam-packed like sardine, climbing over one another, throwing down the tables of cloth. How come that wasn't a problem? But people going to hardwares. I go to hardwares to get stuff for job sites. And even the smallest hardwares, I go to Bag One Sing, I go to a small hardware in St. James, and all of them letting in 2 people at a time. So how come that is a problem? I don't know what is the logic in this? Where
Yeah,
is the
well, the
logic?
thing is, and the government has not provided one. So therefore, the people are going to look for it. And what people are saying is that it's ethnic and racial. You understand? If the PNM and the PNM are causing this by not giving any good reason, of course, people are going to ask why this insane last minute
But
announcement.
Kirk, I can't just let you rest that there because I mean some people will make ethnic issues out of everything, and I need to be able to say
That's
that.
right.
But the situation is idiotic, it's nonsensical.
It is.
Devon raised a
Absolutely.
point there. If you own a hardware, you want to be willing to mobilize employees 3 days a week, no momentum, no. The entire thing sounds
And
so simple.
and And he also makes a point that you're going to be bunching up people on specific days, which is the opposite of flattening the curve. Right? If you open it up for 5, 6, 7 days, whatever, then you are flattening the curve. But now they are lumping. It makes absolutely no sense. We haven't.
Gentlemen, I want
We're flattening.
I want to ask what precipitated this. I can't give one single
Yes.
instance of a complaint against a hardware. It's not like people were complaining about lines outside Doubles, line outside KFC, and they close it down and so on, right? Or line outside the bank and
Can you
Gary threatened to close it. Out of the blue, it looked like the druggist get up. He probably had a falling out with a hardware owner the night before or something, and say hardware stores restricted. We don't know what is the reason. What precipitated this government decision? I mean, Imbert on one side opened up the tax office because he want to get taxes to pay to assist in the COVID funding and so on. And if you cut down all these businesses that are acting responsibly, where are you going to get the taxes from?
I want to bring Philip.
The point is that what legal authority do they have?
We're coming back
What
to that.
legal authority do they
Coming back to
have?
that now, Kirk. I just want to bring Philip Franco into the conversation. Philip, what is your position on this latest restriction to the citizens?
Well, Philip, when I saw the notice today and I started to read it, I was anticipating that they were going to be reversing one of the measures and going to reverse this lockdown in some way. But to my surprise, that they put more lockdown measures in. So, as everybody is saying, why? Why is this? I mean, I suppose tomorrow at the press conference, they're going to give some excuses as to why they have chosen to do so. But as Devon is saying, everybody is saying, if you have less hours, the people's needs are the same, so you're going to have the same amount of people needing to go to those institutions, but in a less time. So you're going to have more people at any given time. Right? At the banks, at the groceries, I've been saying that for very long. Now, I don't have a hardware, right? And my business, right, I feed in sick people, right? I am open, I supply things to high-lows and groceries and things, so I am open business. My business, in fact, has increased. But I am not happy with it because my business is increasing and I am now in a world or in a country where people can't get food to eat, right? When this thing first happened, I said, why don't they just start with getting food, prepared food teams from NGOs and get food in areas so people could get one meal a day. They could come out and easily get a meal, go back home, get their children and things like that, instead of this $1,500 thing, right? Furthermore, we should have embarked on some agri startups in communities, teaching people how to start growing food.
Well, maybe that is a reason that they stopped it, because maybe people are going to the hardware and buying material to build to set up their own little hydroponics and their little backyard garden. Because there is nothing, when Kirk said just now, maybe tomorrow there'll be a press conference to explain it. I find that I have not listened to a press conference since about the 16th of March. It irritates me. No, I'm serious. It irritates me. The nonsense, the political bacchanal. I tell them I come here for information. Give me the first 15 minutes of information and then use the next 2 hours to stunt after I'm gone. But there's hide the information in all the political bacchanal. I am interested in that. But I am interested tomorrow, and I'm going to be tuned in tomorrow to find out if the World Health Organization has put out a release saying coronavirus breeding in 2x4 and gravel.
Yeah, and speaking of the conference tomorrow, I mean, Devant Maraj, have you been given access as a journalist to?
No, I haven't. I haven't been given access, and my attorneys are busy writing up my application to go before the courts, because I think on Friday it was ludicrous, it was ridiculous, where Donna Cox, the Minister of Communication, called upon Rhoda Barrett to ask a question when Rhoda Barrett had no question herself.
Oh,
She
that was
said,
embarrassing.
I don't have a question, but I will make a comment in so much as you call me. And every press conference without fail, Rhoda Barrett, who the minister on her Facebook page says today is your day, is given the opportunity to ask a question within the first 2 or 3 reporters that are asked. And I have to wonder, are these press conferences padded with persons to give the panel of the druggists and the Minister of Communication easy ball to bat to the boundary?
Look, I want to bring a point here that goes into the political history, because you see, you know the weekly post cabinet conferences we have. I don't know if anybody really remembers how that started, but that started during the 1818 when we had no parliament, right? So there was no accountability, and the way they adjourned the parliament was not even a proper adjournment. They took a break and they never came back for 6 months. Then they adjourned it 6 months. And they came back from the break 6 months, spent out.
There was what they
Yeah.
called it when they shuttered the parliament, but they didn't. What they called it? There was a name they used.
Yes, I'm trying to remember yet, because it was not in the
prorogued.
No, it wasn't prorogue, is it? Because prorogued is now to end the session. But it actually prorogue, yeah. But I remember, yeah, there was a technical term, but it really was a break, right? It was a break, and they never came back, and that's all it was. But, and now that has become a feature of our government. This is what they are doing here now, right? Again, we have no parliament, right? So, and now they're ruling by press conference, and they're going to start.
This is martial law.
Absolutely. Without
police stop you. Police could stop you anywhere and send you back. They're threatening you with a $50,000 fine and 6 months jail. How is this not martial law?
Because we don't understand our rights. Sorry?
Did you see the Law Association response to me regarding their silence swirling around this whole issue here?
No, what did they say? What did they? I'm interested. I was looking forward to it.
What's happened to you? They have said they found that the government response so far has been proportionate, and they don't have evidence of the police abusing their power at this point. So I don't know what else they would need. They were not watching the news.
If police not locking people up, and I don't know if that's what's not going on, but the fact of the matter is, on Friday, all of these people who are trying to access this grant that the government sent all over the place. It is the government that sent you to find a photocopier open somewhere and photocopy 2 forms of ID. It is the government that sent you to get a letter of recommendation and proof of where you're living and proof of what you're earning. It's the government put that traffic on the road, and then the police come and stop the people and send them back home. This is a ridiculous and stupid game. And don't forget, we have Philip Franco on the phone. Franco, give me something on that.
What I wanted to talk
I call him in like Rhoda Barrett there, Devant. He wasn't ready.
to mention was this thing about if you are tested positive, that they are going to take you and lock you up, basically, and take you away once you're tested positive. So isn't that a deterrent for people to go and get tested?
Yeah.
Isn't that?
Well,
so that is good. That is not a good thing to do. I don't know what they're really doing.
I don't think they know what they're really doing.
Right? You cannot try to mobilize people with scare tactics.
And that is exactly what is going on.
I have people caught up and they're just hurting them. They think they have COVID, but it's the anxiety they have. And they're just hurting them.
Let's talk about this fact. The hardware generally is not an air-conditioned environment.
No.
As opposed to, say, the bank, the grocery, super farm, and Starlight Drugs. When you're in those places, you are in an enclosed, air-conditioned environment. Our hardware is not. So that, again, we are contradicting common sense. Why is this being allowed? Is it that the government is testing to see, this government, is it that Keith Rowley and his band testing to see how far the public will let it?
Yeah,
Manipulate and lock us down.
Everywhere in the world that's happening. Governments are testing to see how far. You see, the whole idea of the British sense of Parliament and the rights of a freeborn Englishman. That's where it comes from, right? And then where the British Parliament cut off the king's head, and where they had their civil war, and then later in America where they fought for the right. You had Magna Carta and all that. They really believed themselves to be free people, and that the king, not even the king, could tell them what to do, right? They truly believed in their hearts they were free. We have never truly believed in our hearts we are free. We still believe they are slaves and they are masters. And the master could say what he wants, and the slave to damn well listen. And that is the culture.
Accepted, the people accepted.
That is correct. That is a correct and true statement. And that nonsense has to stop. And I want to know if Donna Cox, as a highly paid public servant, thinks the rest of the country who don't support PNM don't have no rights.
Absolutely. They are in charge. They are the masters. And everybody else has to bow down and scrape. That is the model they have in their mind. They don't understand democracy.
But they are a minority government. They do not represent the majority. They are a minority government. Everybody else outnumbers who voted for the PNM. So they are abusing the privilege of being a minority government on top of everything else.
Yeah. Once you're in charge, you're in charge. That has been the philosophy since Eric Williams in 1956, when he did not have a majority. He had 13 of the 26 seats. And ever since then, and then there was a period when they did get strong majorities, but they've always had that idea that once you are in charge, that's it. He always talked about, he doesn't believe in rule by the opposition and all this kind of stuff. They won't work with anybody.
1986 ended this notion that this is PNM country. What the PNM is very good at, is fooling their base and causing division among everybody else in the country. They play a numbers game, from using NHA/HDC as a voter padding machine. Come right back. All the PNM plays is a numbers game. If you look at the results of every election, what happens next is that the people in the communities that are most likely to vote for the PNM always end up with the worst end of the stick. Look at it. Yeah. Look at Diego. Look at Diego Martin West in particular. Now I know Diego Martin West well. I have walked every street in Diego Martin West. I am the person that got the highway bypass under the People's Partnership. It was Jack Warner that agreed to put the bypass that cut the evening traffic. The commute used to be 3 hours, it's down to 15 minutes. Diego Martin West has the most expensive properties in this country. Diego Martin West has Goodwood Park, Bayshore, Goodwood Gardens, Admiral Court, Columbus Circle. These places have ridiculously expensive properties, and they live cheap by jowl with Bagatelle, Covine, Rich
Forest, yes.
Abu Pujad, the forest. Under this,
let me tell
this
you,
prime minister is the member of parliament for Diego Martin West for 32 years, and on his watch, Diego Martin West became a hotspot in this country.
And let me tell you, this is the sociology of the PNM. The PNM they carry out the legacy of slave society. Their headquarters is a plantation house in Port of Spain, right? The richest the communities in the country and the poorest communities of the country fused to make the PNM. They are about master and slave, the leader and the led, right? And they do not want independent, self-sufficient business people who don't depend on the state, who want to be left alone. No. And you see what's happening in the world today. It's really very, very incredible with these measures happening all over, which is wiping out the middle class. It's wiping out small businesses all over the world. And it's just going to be big government with big business and people who are just going to be dependent on the state. It's like global slavery, and it fits in right into the PNM model.
But Kurt, it's interesting you say that. I was watching one of Dinesh D'Souza's lecture, and he was talking about the Democrats and versus the Republican in the United States. The Democrats are having their base as the party of slavery and racism, as opposed to what people think is the Republican. And what he cited was the scholarship on what was the barracks of the slaves under the Democratic characteristics. Is that you had depressed, close housing, broken families, poor health care, minimum wage and minimum labor, and dependent on a particular state enterprise or institution, which is what the PNM has replicated in Trinidad and Tobago. They are now
they love this COVID crisis. They love this. They love this. No parliament. They could say what they want, and everybody's going to be dependent on their every word. Nobody can do anything. They love this. Heaven for them.
We all have been hearing about the public health ordinance, right? Which they are using as the flag to close down supermarket, to close down KFC, to close down double vendors. But how many of us whose lives have been affected in a significant way in that we are told, according to the public health ordinance, we are supposed to stay home? This ordinance was passed in 1914, I believe. And it says in section 4, for the purpose of the ordinance, there is hereby constituted an authority called the Central Board of Health to consist of 9 members to be appointed by the governor and to hold office during his pleasure for not more than 2 years. And it goes on, the board shall be a body corporate with the name of the Central Board of Health and may sue and be sued. It goes on, I say section 5, right? And it talks about the composition of the board. Now, I am asking the question, perhaps somebody with a constitutional framework thinking, has any subsequent legislation repealed that provision for a board? Because we are not hearing about a board, we're hearing about Dial Singh and Rowley meeting in midnight, because they like to meet people in the night, meeting at night, and they deciding to close hardwares early. We are not hearing about a board who is a central board that arrives at this decision. We are only being told that it's a politician meeting the next politician and taking a decision to affect people's lives and their economic well-being. And we have to find out that.
I've spoken to Hubert Volney about it.
While the ordinance is save law, the regulations is not. I am saying that.
And he's saying that although the law is saved, it doesn't mean you can violate the Constitution under that law. You can't operate.
The regulation is not safe.
That's right. And the regulation doesn't allow a minister to violate our fundamental human rights and freedoms, which is in section.
Where they have passed the regulation that not only somebody coming in the country, but their family now, they could take away their freedom without any due process and keep them in Cora. That's what
But
they have
we
done by
set
regulation.
precedent. Devon, we set this precedent. 8 people died in this country, ostensibly from COVID-19 coronavirus, and we have no details. We don't know their age, what underlying conditions, pre-existing conditions, we know nothing. I can
What
give
drugs
you
they were given when they was in hospital?
what drugs they were given. I
No,
found
but
out that during the Spanish flu, people spreading all kind of drama to keep frightening each other. Almost 30% of the people who died during the Spanish flu died from toxic poisoning because of aspirin.
Correct.
You know that? That because of the Spanish flu 100 years ago, we've learned because of the Spanish flu that anything more than 5 milligrams of aspirin is toxic to human life. The doctors were prescribing 40 milligrams, 40 grams of aspirin or milligrams of aspirin.
And it's an anti-inflammatory. So if you use that, it's going to reduce or suppress your immune response. Right? And that's the same thing for the ibuprofen, the Advil, the Motrin, the Tylenol, paracetamol, the steroids, all the things they give to bring down people's fever, all the things that the elderly are on for the aches and pains in the convalescent homes or in their homes that they take like it's candy every single day, right? All the pharmaceuticals are implicated. I wrote a letter to the Prime Minister and I showed him all the studies, the previous studies that were done that showed that all these drugs suppress the immune system. And that is why the elderly are susceptible. These elderly are not susceptible to this because they have pre-existing conditions. The elderly are susceptible because they are on pharmaceutical drugs that they keep them on because those pharmaceutical drugs don't cure anything and they leave these people on it for the rest of their lives. Right? And that is the reason why they are susceptible. It's not because they're elderly with pre-existing conditions. It's because they are on pharmaceutical drugs. And they want to keep pushing these pharmaceutical drugs. But Big Pharma has to come down now. Right? People have to read between the lines.
No, but Philip Franco, I mean, this point, and I want those who just came on to know that is Philip Franco on the phone with us. We have 114 people seemingly perpetually now as our list of cases, right? Are these people all in a facility?
They let some out, so there's probably about 70-something still in a facility.
Devon, I want to ask you something because you have a lot of experience suing the state.
no, but
60
yeah,
of that,
before you ask me, you know, we have more people murdered right now in Trinidad than died of COVID-19.
More people
Devon, we
died of
have
the
more die of hunger.
40 people. Yeah, 40 people
More
died of
people
the flu
died of,
already this year.
More people
but we
die
don't
of
engage.
hunger.
I'm talking
Yeah,
about this
That is,
month here. In this month
yeah.
here,
I
when you're
talked
looking
about
up,
this. Yeah, this year we've
yeah,
had more people die of the flu.
and
no, but
what
the
is more
reality is
hypocritical?
use those things because they have people scared, so scared. There are people who working for the state. There is a meteorologist on my newsfeed timeline that puts out Spanish flu statistics. Scared my son Batty. I had to tell him last night, I said, pump your brakes. In 1918, the world was on horseback. People was walking to and fro. In Trinidad, in the world now, in 2020, if you contracted COVID-19 from somebody, by the end of one day, you would have been in touch with more strangers than the average person in 1918 could see in a month, and the world was at war. This is a different time. And if if that existed and we still only have 165,000 deaths and half of that caused by Italy and France and Spain, their elderly population, 99% of the people who died in Italy were above the age of 80, had pre-existing conditions and got infected because the mayor sent the citizens out to hug Chinese people from Wuhan.
Yeah.
And
And
because
one
of
more
that,
thing. Yeah. One more thing.
go.
I don't know if you've been following Dr. Jay Bhattacharya. He's from Stanford University, and a month ago there was a viral interview he had talking about whether whether the stats were right or the death rate, and he started a serological survey. So they just finished it in California, and it's what was suspected, which is that many more people have had it and they didn't even realize. So the numerator and denominator is totally off, and the death rate is just the same as the flu. It is far less deadly than they initially thought. And so now this study has to be replicated all over, to be safe or whatever. But it is not as deadly as people have said.
No, but we need to come back to this though, because now there are actual statistics and facts that you could base all of your planning on. This is no longer a wild shot in the dark. Now they're talking about bracing for a second wave. I am asking Trinidadians and Tobagonians, stop parroting foolishness. If the airport and the seaport is closed, where is it coming from? The Martians going to travel over Trinidad and see the clouds? Where is it going to come from?
On what basis are they talking about the second wave? On what basis did they make the initial projections? These are just wild guesses.
You know why? Because World War
terrible devastation.
World War I ended, and all of the soldiers went home en masse. And when all of the soldiers went home en masse, they who were infected in Theater 1 took the virus to Theater 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And that gave them a second wave. But there is no movement of people around the world happening. 1 million soldiers went home to America and killed 675,000 Americans. But there's no mass movement of people happening now. It is too easy to cut and paste specific pieces of history and use it to terrify people now. There is no second wave to expect.
Yeah. And I want to say, I think that the mentality of people have changed. When you were young, when I was young, I'm sure when you went riding on your bike, you didn't have a helmet, right? And now, same parents who didn't ride bicycles with a helmet on will not let their child ride without a helmet.
Knee pads, elbow pads.
Yeah, there's this. It's this paranoia, this fear. It gets to something very deeply psychological and maybe even spiritual. There's this fear. We are not. We have lost our sense of self, and we are just reduced to these dithering slaves.
This government is making rules and edicts based on pie in the sky again. There is not.
And people are so easily. They are manipulating fear.
Because as Philip Franco said earlier, they scared the crap out of everybody. So nobody knows what is fact. And we need to start telling people, debunk that whole second wave nonsense. Because the second wave in World War I happened because that was when the war ended and everybody. I asked Eric Mackey, who posted all this Spanish flu thing on the wall. I asked him, do you know how the Spanish flu ended? Do you know when it ended? Because it started in the summer of 1918 and it went away on its own in the summer of 1919. The same way it comes, the same way it goes. Do you know that all of these Spanish flu, SARS, MERS, all of them is the same stupid coronavirus that is a mutation? This one is infectious, yes. But what happened in Wuhan that went from Wuhan to Italy, from Italy to Spain and France, frightened the crap out of the world. We know now that tropical countries, there are statistics and facts being released now that the best place to be in the world right now is a tropical island. So Keith Rowley and the PNM not getting any credit despite the fact that this PNM cruise incubated and brought 60 infected people into the country. Forget that. We still survived it. We survived the 50,000 carnival visitors. Because of the hot sun. It is not ultraviolet and none of that nonsense. Hot sun, and you know what they're telling you? There is actual fact now that countries that have a beach life, people who spend time on the beach in hot sun with salt water, they have the lowest numbers.
That's the immune system.
We close our beaches.
Yeah.
We are trying. When we knew on January 31st, 2020 to proclaim legal notice number 34, we put a pin in it and we let 50,000 people into the country. It's like the government was doing everything in their power to test to see if we could really get COVID-19 here. God is a Trinity. Was it dereliction of duty? Is this reckless disregard for human life? Every single one of their policies, every edict is founded on nonsense. And it is time for lawyers to step up. And if we can't get the parliament called, then we need to seek judicial review of the actions of the government. This cannot continue. And what is even worse, they have no more grounds for a state of emergency. That time has passed. They need to come straight to the people, convene the parliament. Even if they're convening the parliament online, like how we having this meeting here tonight.
Yeah. But you see, but they love this. They love this is now authoritarianism. This is rule by press conference, no questions. I mean, even though they had, Bridget Annison George
I
was
am
shut
asking
down.
questions. From tonight, you are asking questions. Philip Franco is asking questions. Devon Maraj is asking questions.
Let me make a point. The reason
We have a
for the shutdown.
regulation now.
Just let Franco finish this, Devon, then you're coming in. Sorry about that. Go ahead, Philip.
The reason for the shutdowns that we were told, not just from our government, but from governments all over the world, was not to eradicate the virus, but it was to flatten the curve, right? So that they could build institutional systems and whatever to be able to handle the caseloads, right? That is the reason for these measures. We are flat. We can handle. Imagine if we had 2,000 cases. What are we doing?
Exactly.
How would they cope? Or 5,000 cases. We only have 100 cases, and you only have about 70 of them locked up there now, right? But we are flat, and we cannot do this to our people and the economy because it's going to affect the people. It's affecting the people now, the poor people, right? And I go into Massey, right? And I see they have baked chicken. They're selling baked chicken, lasagna, and all kinds of prepared foods. But yet, little mom and pop shops who prepare food for people who can't cook or don't cook, they have widows in their house.
Philip Franco, Gerald Aboud, who took me to task on Facebook, Starlight Drugs is selling cooked meals. How is that not a takeout restaurant? How is it okay for Starlight Drugs to sell cooked meals and the rest of the restaurant industry in the country who doing the same, come in, wash your hand, pick up your food, go to the cash register and pay? What is the difference between Gerald Aboud and Starlight Drugs selling a fridge full of prepared meals from a kitchen?
It's all very biased because you have time. I need to tile a bathroom now, right? I can't, my tile store close up. But Bhagwan is open and they have tiles. So they're selling their tiles while the other tile outlets can't sell and they're going to go under the staff have no employment settings. Just institute the hygienic measures, the social distancing, let people wear their masks, let us practice these things, but open up the economy, man.
If it could work for Massey stores, if it could work for Massey and Superfarm, why it can't work for every other business? The police, the same way the police went and shut down Inshan and Baraka grounds, the same way, if you get a call that says people jumping off the pier in sea lots, go and lock them up, it's the same way you could get a call that say, hey, listen, I outside so-and-so establishment and they're not practicing social distancing. It didn't cause you to put, there was no consequence for Gregory Aboud in Jimmy Aboud's store when they packed 10,000 people inside the store. So why must this be always coming across like...
I'm thinking, how many rent payments are people going to miss? How many can they miss? How many bill payments can they miss? How much wages can they forego? How much savings do people have to tide them over in these weeks? This is a catastrophe. If you look at the figures in the United States, the amount of unemployment claims is the highest in recorded history. It is mind-boggling what is happening here. The destructions of people's wages, their livelihood. This is going to affect their health insurance. It's going to affect their mental health. This is going to affect every other health.
This is a whole reboot. Devon, you wanted to say something just now.
Yeah, I want to say, well, coming on the mad onto something. Yesterday I shared Aioli restaurant, Philip, open as business as normal because they don't have a restaurant according to what they're looking at the grocery aspect, right? But you and I know they have food prepared, much like
I want to say this not defending Ioli. So don't
like
take this as a defense.
food,
I is a regular in Ioli, and I want to tell you something. But they're not selling prepared meals. It is a gourmet grocery. That's exactly what that marketplace is. Their restaurant is still closed. So I know people have given you information. I only want to say this because this is my show and I want to be clear. When I tell you, because I know Gerald Aboud gonna get vexed for me putting his business in the road. But what Gerald Aboud is selling is complete, they are complete meals. That means there is a restaurant kitchen somewhere providing those meals. Aioli, they sell, now I mean, some of the things is ready to eat, but it is not complete meals. So if it's semantics or we splitting hairs, I just wanted to tell you that.
Sorry, I got this comment going.
Make your point.
It is right according to the law.
But Philip,
Go ahead.
it has. I want to bring us back, and again, I can't belabor this point enough. What is the lawful basis of this? This public health ordinance is predicated in the act on the establishment of a board, which is then accountable to the governor, which is the president here / cabinet. We have not heard about the appointment of a board, but we see the prime minister and the minister of health making regulations which have infringed upon people's constitutional right. They have issued a stay-at-home order, which is really moral suasion, hoping that you have good sense and you stay home. And I want to say I hope people stay home. But then you have the police now stopping you on the road and they are interrogating you. And if you can't satisfy the policeman, based on the reports in the media and television, what the police themselves are saying, they will send you home. So, for example, you're driving down the road. What you're doing here, I'm making grocery, but you're living. One of the interviews I heard, the policeman used the example. If you're leaving Gasparillo and you're making groceries in Caroni, they will send you back. So they will determine for you where you can shop because they're not happy with your answer. Now, if I am leaving to meet my attorney, now legal services are considered essential. Can they stop me as well? Because the lawyer might be essential, but what about the clients? And then I don't want to lie. If a police stop me, I want to tell him it's none of his business where I go.
Yeah.
Because there is no constitutional power for him to tell
That's
me
right.
to infringe on my freedom of movement. Now,
We are free people.
most of us have heeded the call, accepted the moral suasion that we stay home to control this thing. But we see an abuse that's taking place that could usher Trinidad into a police state because the population now has become desensitized. That because the COVID hysteria, we are equating life and death with the abdication of our civil liberties, and we feel the majority of citizens feel that life and death higher than our rights. So therefore, we are willing for those rights be trampled upon and abrogated back onto the state. Dangerous.
But what is so ridiculous about this is that those people that say that oh well, it's life and death, and all right, you can make the same argument that we should never use a road in Trinidad until all road accidents stop. Where does it end? As long as a death occurs anywhere, then we should not engage in activity. Those same people will go on, will take a bus, will take a plane, will take a car. And I don't know this. By calling it COVID-19, it sounds like some asteroid. It sounds like some something strange. I think that they're really psychological operation.
Yeah, this is SARS too. I read an article. I read something in The Economist today. I want to tell you something. It's not the little people talking. It's easy to debunk small publications. But when the Economist weighs in on this, because they're asking serious questions, where do we go from here? And I am asking. I asked Trinidad and Tobago today, and if you would allow, I want to put it in the context. If you would let me put it into the conversation, so we can discuss it, because I need to know how we going, where we going from here, and if the economy is going to be damaged irreversibly by this, it is going to kill a lot more people than COVID-19 ever could. The reality that is facing us right now is exactly that. So I wrote this today. Let's ask it another way. What happens when the economy is destroyed? The Heritage and Stabilization Fund is empty. We've used up all our credit with anyone who would lend us if they still have not found a cure. What happens then? What happens when the government is flat broke and tapped out and there is no money left to offer grants? What then? Do we wait until looting, violence, and starvation becomes our reality before having a discussion on how we are going to live with this virus the same way we have learned to live with everything else that could kill us that came to stay? If the supermarkets, banks, pharmacies, and bakeries could operate sanitizing and social distancing, why can't the rest of businesses? Why can't this become our new normal? Yes, for all of us, there will be changes. Children will have to be homeschooled for the duration, and I'll tell you why I'm saying this. Children are a pathogenic highway. Every flu that is spread, if school is closed, you get a smaller flu season. Once schools open, because children are the perfect breeding ground and incubators for viruses, so schools have to be closed. Children will have to be homeschooled for the duration, and parents with small children will either have to work from home, get a different source of income, or be put on government assistance as the rest of the country tries to get the economy back to at least functional. Agriculture and food, I will stop here. Agriculture and food production should become the most important thing we do.
Correct.
Yeah, and
But you see this thing about the school children, right? School children need to go into the environment. We all need to go into the environment. If we stay in our houses, we're going to be depleting our immune system's capabilities, right? With the stress, without sunlight, without activity, we need to be outside. The strongest among us, you know who they are? The poorest among us. The ones who in the yard playing in the dirt, not the ones playing in the tiled driveways, right? And inside the gypsum homes, right? They're not the strongest. The strongest is the vagrants who are on the streets, right? Drinking the glass of water and eating the garbage. They have more immune capability than all of us in our fancy houses.
And right now,
we have to get into the environment and deal with it. It has things to deal with this, right?
Philip, I just tell you.
Vitamin C, iodine, zinc, we have it all, right? I have Symptoma back in my laboratory there, right? That's what they make the hydroquinone thing from, right? But that is not that for the malaria, right? But we have antivirals. They have things that are antiviral. We don't need all this thing. The big pharma has to throw away all those things. They have to get rid of it. It's nonsense.
Right now in Spain, there's a Free the Children movement, and the mayor of Barcelona herself is leading it. She's a mother of let me see the age of her children. I can't remember, but 3 and 9, and I mean, people are rebelling across the world right now. They cannot take this. You cannot keep people down for so long. It's really like
trauma. This is going to cause Look,
the World Economic Forum. Let me just read the title of this one now. The World Economic Forum has an article called "Lockdown is the world's biggest psychological experiment, and we will pay the price." You know, they said with some 2.6 billion people around the world, we are conducting arguably the largest psychological experiment ever. This will result in a secondary epidemic of burnouts and stress-related absenteeism in the latter half of 2020. Taking action now can mitigate the toxic effects of COVID-19 lockdowns. There has to be a move.
I want to ask the three of you a simple question. This is the question that needs to preoccupy Trinidad and Tobago. If the curve is flat and we've quarantined for over a month and we've had no new cases for 21 days, because these new cases we get here were cases that were infected and incubated before they showed symptoms. Why? And our borders are closed. We debunk the idea of a second wave and where it could possibly come from. Why are we still locked down in Trinidad and Tobago? Why are we
locking down more?
Why?
Putting more measures to lock down
The
more.
government has to explain this,
Step by step.
and they have to explain this with fact. And they cannot they cannot convene their little press conferences with PNM operatives asking questions, soft questions to fool them. They have to answer this question. They have to answer the question, why are you continuing to lock down the entire country for a situation that seems to be behind us? If the borders remain closed, where are any new infections supposed to come from?
They are just putting up this thing out of the blue. Oh, there's going to be a second, what do they call it? The recurrence or the surge or the second wave. They are just pulling this out of their behind, right? They like it like this, and in fact, they may never call Parliament again until the elections. We may have an early election because of that. Because in Parliament, the opposition is going to ask questions about your expenditure, about the HSF, about, and then also even about all these legal things. They may not want to go back to Parliament at all. They don't want to go back. They love this. They love this.
But people walking around thinking that the people who were confined to their homes for the past 30 days are still incubating coronavirus. There are no real medical professionals, and Devon spoke about that earlier. There are no real medical professionals to explain to people that the 14 days it lives in you as a host, you either get it or you don't. And if you get it and it is mild, it passes and it goes the way of a flu. You could have COVID virus for 3 days. When the Icelandic government tested the nation, they found half the people of Iceland had COVID-19 and they didn't know.
That's right.
None of them knew. You have no
and they just found that in California.
Today I saw an article that apparently people are testing positive because they had the flu shot.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
Devant.
Philip, I think the PNM are most comfortable when they are in dictatorial mood. We've had innumerable amount of experiences in our history with Okasipol and the IRA, and how they've treated with so many instances with persons having to go to the court and fight down because the PNM state has the treasury behind them. And we must never forget that Mr. Imbert, as Minister of Finance, said people went riot because they could raise the price of gas. So we are not rioting. We are in a beaker. The Rowley say we are frogs in the beaker, right? So the water getting hot, we are dying slowly, and we don't want to make a fuss about it.
Video editor for all creators. What you doing there?
People are coming out.
I'm future you.
On the streets and being turned away by the police, and they're accepting it because they are faced with the equation in their mind: life or death, or coronavirus, or no rights. And the government is supporting that narrative. They have dusted off this 1914 law as much they did with the Sedition Act, another repressive measure, and implementing the public health ordinance, which in my mind it may be unconstitutional. There's no board. We are not, because the act speaks to a board. The regulations is not saved in my mind. A lawyer may disagree in that. The Law Association seems to have taken a hands-off approach. because we are so compromised as a people in a small society. Everybody want a food. So the lawyer who takes a position anti-government, he ain't getting no brief from the state. And once you fall in a camp, you are ostracized and excommunicated for life.
What's the
A
Equal
decision,
Opportunity Commission?
but they collecting pay under false pretenses in my mind. But what about the police complaint authority? Policemen held a vagrant on the road during this lockdown, make the man do push-ups, make the man drink punching and all sort of things. And then the same policeman had we saw the same vagrant coming on saying that he was okay with that. He agreed that, and we have to believe he said that in his own free will. And the police complaints authority, headed by David West, is silent on these things. We are not. There was a traffic jam on Friday for hours because of what? Roadblock. And the Law Association tells me today in writing that they have no evidence. They have no evidence of abuse. When you have, I think it's Officer Batson on TV yesterday, say if he interviews you in a roadblock and you're saying you're going to grocery in Scarani, but you live in Gasparillo, they'll turn you back.
On
You
what
could understand.
authority?
Well,
On what
the
authority?
that what is most disturbing with this, Philippa, is that a political statement is made at a political press conference daily. And the police then, without any law to rely on, are implementing policies to carry out a political directorate. Not a law.
Yeah.
Not a law. They are carrying out a political direction based on a statement made at a press conference. Now, I have no difficulty with the call to stay at home, but that should be up to the individual, and the police could call you, caution you, and advise you. But if you choose to ignore it, and the politician does not want to impose a lawful state of emergency where the police could be shrouded by law to tell you go back home in a lawful manner, you have to respond to them. But instead he might then watch your car until your brake light off, or pull you aside and detain you for 2 hours, checking your insurance, your tire, as a way to frustrate you. Isn't that an abuse of police authority?
Yeah, but all right, but that takes place all over the world, and we know it takes place all over the world. And I also want to say, people will say that I defend him and I stand up for him all the time, but I think that the one thing standing between us and our police state is Gary Griffith. I think another commission.
This is a personal to Gary. I mean, he has done
Well,
tremendous.
of course, I know
But,
it's not,
but,
but I
but,
want to say this because I think that we had other commissioners that would have been very compliant to the political directorate. Gary has stood his ground.
no, fairness. But on this issue, I think I'm concerned about the abuse. But we are a hypocritical society, because when I released the name of the first person who died, everybody came out and said, well, no, we shouldn't have done that. And that we should have maintained the man there, but he's patient still. Patient confidentiality. Now, we have television stations in Trinidad showing you about people who recover, patients, talk and getting them to come and talk about their experience. While all over the world, they have no problem showing you who died, what condition they died, because the people want to know what communities may or may not be
The
affected.
guided, you need the information. You
We
want
are hypocrites.
you referred to it earlier as the power of suasion, where the public is allowing the government power that it does not have. Collectively, we've said to the government, you know you don't have that authority. I know you don't have that authority, but we are collectively afraid of COVID-19 coronavirus. So we will all voluntarily take a step back into our houses to break the transmission. That's what's taken place, and if not worldwide, in Trinidad and Tobago. But
You don't think you people are afraid of the government?
no, I think that the government now is trying to use that the people have already voluntarily sequestered themselves. I think the government is trying to establish, if not a precedent, a role for itself outside of the Constitution. And I think that has to stop now. And I think that the only way for that to stop if I could just finish this thought, I think that the only way for that to stop now is the medical professionals in this country have to break the silence. The medical professionals in this country got another letter yesterday. All medical professionals in the country that work for the state were given another gag order yesterday. And all of those professionals need to fling that gag order in the government's face and speak out and tell the nation what they know. Because if the medical professionals speak about what they know about coronavirus, about mass testing, about herd mentality, this whole thing will fall apart.
Yeah, because you see, the thing is about the moral suasion that Devan talked about, that's what's being governed. Now, there's a dynamic here, a sociological dynamic, which is trust, that we will allow you to tell us to stay home if we trust you that you have our best interest at heart, that you're not going to abuse it, and that you're doing this for the best of the country. Now, once that trust is broken, all hell will break loose. And the government is abusing that trust. And that is exactly what's happening now. And the second point you raised, I fully endorse. The medical profession has to speak.
But Dr. Anand Chaturgoon has been speaking out, and I think perhaps that letter was geared to one man, Dr. Anand Chaturgoon. He has been speaking out, and if you listen to him, you would realize there's another conversation happening in the medical community, which the government doesn't want to present on any forum at all. Because
I haven't checked it out. Could you please educate me and the listeners on that conversation?
Anand Chaturgoon, I am not a medical person, so I don't want to try and trace what he has said. But
misrepresented,
but he has been on a number of television radio programs, I-95, U97 with Ken Ali, and he has presented, I think, compelling arguments for you to doubt what the government is doing properly, right? Because he had a rollout plan for, let's say, the Couva Hospital, which was presented over a year ago to the minister, and that was never implemented because just as the Beach High School was closed for a decade because Manning and Imbert and them say it was gas in the area. Remember, Philip? There was natural gas in Beach. So the Beach High School had to remain closed for a decade. Now we have
how many children?
Dwayne, right? Dwayne's that one. Now we have children going in that school for close to 10 years already, and another decade. No gas in the area. The Couva Hospital was on a fault line, an earthquake fault line, and it couldn't be occupied. Now, is the same Couva Hospital is the escape valve for them as providing bed.
Devon, I have to interrupt you to ask you this question. The people that do these things, the people who say these things as justification, I want you to understand that position and then opening the same hospital are bookends of one action, and that is a clear example of misbehavior in public office. Why no action?
Well, I think those things are more for the court of public opinion than the court of law. I don't know.
No, there was an operational health facility that was kept closed under false pretenses. Why no action? Why no redress? That is misbehavior.
I have asked that question myself, and answers I've gotten from the lawyers I've spoken to. They talk about the bar of evidence is so high, and the local courts.
The threshold is high for that, I believe.
Yeah, the threshold, and one of the things why we need the Privy Council is that even our judges don't understand what freedom and democracy is. They still have a master and slave mentality, and and they will rule for authority very, very often. And it's only when we get to the Privy Council then they understand what a free citizen means and what the state power are.
When you say that, I remember there's a comedian in America. The week after Donald Trump was elected, Madonna and them had 1 million women march. You remember that? This curly redhead comedian, I can't remember her name.
Kathy Griffin.
She came to the meeting with Donald Trump's severed head. That's what
Yeah.
she brought. She brought Donald Trump's severed head. In Trinidad, I thought about that when I read what I don't know if it was a magistrate or a judge had to say to the person who was convicted of using obscene
Yeah.
language against Fitzgerald Hines, and I'm thinking to
No,
myself,
not only that, a man get charged for 30 days for saying something against the Prime Minister in South on
Yeah.
Wednesday this
no,
week
but
On
on
Facebook.
Facebook.
Yeah. On Facebook.
So
Devon,
in
I asked,
Trinidad, you could get
if I
locked
had
up.
the no, but if I had the time, I want to write the Commissioner of Police and the Director of Public Prosecutions to ask them for the list of all the words that you cannot say.
Yeah.
Because the judge or the
Well,
magistrate has
right,
to
right at the
account.
Bridget Anita George and Christine Kangaloo too, because the
No, because
parliamentarian is shifting son. The goalpost moving.
Yeah, exactly. You know, what it is, it's based on a principle, right? And it will shift it, but the principle that they operate here is master and slave, not democracy, and that is a very, very key thing. We think that our boss can do us anything. We think that the politician can do us anything. We think that once you are subordinate, you have no rights. That's what
Philip,
we believe deep down in our soul.
Philip Franco, do you think that this is hysteria, that the government is fueling hysteria?
Of course they are.
So, Devon Maraj, this is the question I was going to ask you earlier. As somebody who has a lot of experience in the courts or in the state, what is keeping a citizen from suing the government over all of this, to get it to the Privy Council, to get the Privy Council to adjudicate on if any of this was legal?
Well, first you
If it
had to
was
get
wrong.
a good lawyer. You had to get a good lawyer who could see and conceptualize a case. And secondly, you had to get a good litigant, somebody who willing
Yeah.
to see it through the end. And in Trinidad, both quantities are in short supply because the attorneys that tend to carry this forward tend to be Anand Ramlogan, Jayad Ramdi, Jagdev Singh,
Victimization.
Kyle Taklal Singh, Ramesh Maharaj. So that you're talking about 5 people that I know on my hand, right?
Yeah.
Jagdev Singh, Ram Logan, Jayad Ramdeen, Kyle Taklal Singh, and Ramesh Maharaj, right? That is the 5. And the litigants on the other side is Devant and Huagin.
Exactly.
I try to
So,
encourage
yeah,
Philip Franco. He knows this thing. That's why I try to encourage him.
Knows what
so
thing?
is it.
Philip Franco, I
I
support you.
don't want
Bring
to
an
see.
action and force the state to account medically. I want medical professionals to tell the nation if all of this is based on fact or hearsay, panic-induced hearsay, or hearsay-induced panic.
But the simple question is that we have a flat curve. We can handle whatever cases. Open up the thing. Don't bring more measures to bear on the population like this. This is crazy. I can't take tomorrow. I like to go in front of the Prime Minister's house tomorrow with a placard and say, no, you know. Because
Yeah.
I have my in here, you know.
No, but
I
no, that is absolutely right. Because there are 3 things that are happening, especially in the States. You have intellectual pushback, which is happening more. Then you have middle class rebellion, and this is happening more with these protests. And now Trump is saying liberate Michigan, liberate Virginia, liberate, I can't remember the other one. And then the third one is rioting. And that's happening in lower class rioting. There's 3 different types of rebellion that's going to happen. Intellectuals pushing back. Then the middle
All of
class
that is
maybe
part of the
organized protest. And then,
forget whether we riot or not. Kirk Megu, this is an interesting point that you raised, and it's an interesting point for you. Because all of this could be an exercise in testing human behavior and how far they could go.
But
Yeah.
let me ask Dr. Nego something, right? I read somewhere that Trinidad and Tobago during slavery was the only Caribbean island that didn't have a slave revolt. And they went on to say that the reason for it was that the slaves that came to Trinidad came from a special part of Africa where they weren't very aggressive, right? They were more docile. So is that true, that what I heard there?
That doesn't sound like what I know. What I will tell you is this: we never had a proper plantation slave society like Jamaica or Barbados or Antigua, where in those countries you could go in the countryside and you see these great old houses, and the descendants of those very slaves are still working as servants for the descendants of the very slave owners. When you go to the countryside here, you don't see white families. We never had that. Most of the slaves in Trinidad were domestic slaves, right? That's one thing. And we hardly had any slaves compared to the other society. And one more thing, we had more black and colored slave owners than anywhere else, right? We had black and colored slave owners.
And a side street as that is, I want to bring us back to this because this is because this is important. I mean, we're gonna have to wrap, and I know that people wanted to call in, but we ended up having Franco on the dedicated line, and I wanted to keep his input. So I know that we're gonna come back at this. Hopefully, early next week, we're gonna have a part 2 to this because we're gonna need people to keep asking questions. I want to try and get as many professionals and intellectuals as possible on board to add their 2 cents to this question because our curve is flat. We have no new cases. The borders are closed. Why are we increasing restrictions instead of relaxing them?
Yeah.
Because look, I think that this government wants to try and see how much it could get away with.
Yeah.
They have no intellectuals among them. They depend on cut and paste from CNN. It's almost as if they sit down in the night and see what Dr. Fauci have to say on CNN and watch Bloomberg and BBC World, and then copy and paste it in time for the 10 o'clock press conference. They feed reporters questions are asked them so they will be able to answer it and make themselves sound good and talk about nonsense about 1 minute. The other thing saying, don't wear mask. Remember, he rag up Sean Douglas, who was in the press conference, what you're wearing the mask for inside of here and so on. Next 2 weeks afterwards is wear the mask. You have to wear it all over. And police want to ask, why you're not wearing mask. They have no idea. This is was that?
Pick up all of us and send it to China.
Well, China is our next problem. I mean,
No,
if you watch some,
before they took it seriously.
they take some more to China. China, who is now being accused and litigation has started, I think, from a Texas person to sue China for having originated the virus in the Wuhan virus. I mean, we continue to get kits from China that missing parts, all kind of nonsense. Like, this is a cut and paste response to a pandemic, which they have no idea about, implementing illegal laws but on the fly. This is a VAPS, Vike government responding in a like manner as they have done. The Minister of Health talking agriculture, not speaking anything about what they're doing to ramp up production in Trinidad, because only less than a year ago, Dr. Rowley was saying we don't have enough land in Trinidad for agriculture. He goes Ghana and he going to bring back cassava and ground provision. Yam. He's going to bring that here when 6 months before we can't be self-sufficient in agriculture because it is a government of PR and ad hocism and fooling the people.
Scaremongering. Now, I just went on World Odometers to see this second wave in China. They talk things like it's real. And the second wave in China is a cluster of 16 cases in Henan province.
Yeah.
China is a massive country. China is
Brilliant.
1.5 billion people, brother. China is a massive country. So when 16 people get a virus in China, it's like me going to the hospital because an eyelash drop out. People not realize.
I mean, just to put the population in scale, you know, all the countries on this side of the world, the Western Hemisphere, add up: Canada, America, Brazil, Venezuela, Argentina. It's 800 million people. It's not even. China has more people than this entire side of the world combined. So that's like 16 people in this entire half of the world. It is insane.
So can
But
we
let-
then?
One thing I want to talk about, Philip. How was the Brooklyn facility in Sandy Grande selected? Right?
Yeah.
When asked about that, the procurement of that, the minister, the druggist minister we have, passes the buck to the Eastern Regional Health Authority, which reports to him and fall under him as a board. But he tells that to a malleable media in front who they screen to come on, and they don't press him. But if these people are coming from Cuba and Cora, or they'll land up in Sandy Grande.
And there are two issues here. One is that there appears to be a connection between the owner of that, and so there's some kickback happening. And two, that facility actually has legal guidelines on what it can be used for, and quarantining people is not one of them. There are issues that need.
I'm talking about
Before we
the
even go there,
badminton court.
what's that?
What you talking about? The badminton facility, or you're still talking about Grand?
Grande.
Yeah,
Grande.
Grande.
No, but what
yeah,
about this? The
Before you go there,
badminton?
we have 51% shares in Hilton that empty now with bedroom and everything.
No, it's not.
We have
It's not empty.
we have-
It's not empty. They are using it as quarantine for the oil and gas industry. That's why it was kept so silent. They are
so
moving
witness, if
40-day
you're
cruise in and out.
if you're the 1%, you're there. If you're not, if you're the 99%, Sandy Grande for you.
Roach
But you have
mosquito.
the 50 beds in Napa. The 50 beds in Napa. But because we don't have that amount of people, but yet still they pick this Sandy Grande location and have not yet explained it. Now I understand that the regional corporation may have done the refurbishments there. Who is paying for that?
Yeah, and I mean, contrast this with what I understand happened in Barbados. Our nationals, who are government, and refused to take, the Barbados government put them up in a resort. Was it Sugar Hill or something like that? I mean,
Something.
yeah. I mean, so look how the Bajan government has treated our citizens there compared to how our government is treating our citizens right now. It's terrible. It's disgusting.
We had
Disgusting.
Barbados laughing at us. They're laughing, literally
Everybody
laughing.
laughs at us.
They're laughing at
Yes.
us. Stuart Young,
And they're right.
Stuart Young and Terence Deyalsing, when they are booted out of government, they need to start a sitcom. Stuart Young, I will tune into that to see what hijinks they're up to this week, because Stuart Young and Terence Deyalsing have made a mockery of governance in this country.
They'll have to leave the country.
Bear in mind that we had a lockdown in this country that we were saying we couldn't get these 33 people, nationals here, for the people from Suriname. But we went with the key, unlocked the lockdown to let the vice president of Venezuela come in here to meet Prime Minister Raul. There was no 6 feet in between them. There was no social distance, no face mask and glove. And this is the same person whose assets were frozen in Europe and who the DEA had taken legal action against in the same week. But they had a secret talk, and when asked about that, the Prime Minister say, who want to get involved in Hasikara?
And
This woman,
you're asking why they're blocking Devon News Network? You're asking
Yeah.
why they're blocking her. They don't want to answer those things.
No,
Akash not
it is-
asking that, you know, Devon. Akash not
Akash,
asking those questions.
but we want to know this woman they come to see Keith Rowley because she like him and they're planning to go cinema together and take a drink somewhere. You know, is a vice president of state coming to meet our prime minister, but that is a rendezvous that we the population are not privy. I want to know, did they have an arrangement to prevent the Americans using Trinidad as a launching pad, or did they discuss Euro coming here in case they throw him out?
And if I know we're coming to the end there, but I want to chuck a little something with
So much side
Philip.
streets we have to, but I just want to say, Devon, all of those side streets, I feel we had to do a part 2 to this early next week. I'm telling you, we're going to go and explore. What we cannot touch it, cannot touch.
Yeah, like let me chuck this thing about the vaccine, right? Because this is what people are saying. You know, Bill Gates has been talking about, you know, that this needs to be extended until a vaccine is developed. And of course, who's going to sell that vaccine? And then people are talking about this quantum dot tattoo, which he has funded through Rice University in the United States. It's on their website. And then on Good Friday, when people could not celebrate Good Friday, Microsoft had an ad with an actual occultist witch artist who was involved in Pizzagate, having her do some sort of immersive 3D art for Microsoft, and they were forced to take it down. I mean, where these rabbit holes go is just incredible. This is something much bigger than just the PNM. Yeah,
No,
this
but
is really
absolutely,
big.
absolutely. Look, and I want to say, before I bring you all to your closing comments, I need to say that the actual panic that is prevalent in the population is what is allowing the total incompetence and governmental malpractice to pass as if somebody is doing something good. The people are so scared to death. I tell you, I speak for my parents. My parents locked down a full month now. They're not letting nobody in their house, You bring something for my parents, you leave it in the garage and you go. And they come and they sanitize it and take it inside. It's like some weird dystopian novel that I read in here that something is going on. It's insane. That panic, the amount of misinformation that has been shared with our public. And somebody said it earlier. We find something in China, that's Trinidad. Something in America, that's Trinidad. It happened in New York, that's Trinidad. What they're not watching that is really Trinidad is despite 50,000 carnival visitors and 20,000 people came in after, and this whole, take away the cruise ship, our numbers is less than 70. Take away the cruise ship, our deaths is 2. 2 people. 2. And we don't know the dates, the ages, the pre-existing conditions of the people who have died. We don't know what we in Trinidad and Tobago consider a severe case. We don't know if the people that are in Cora and Couva actually have severe cases to the level. You understand what I'm asking you? We have 114 listed. Do we have 114 ventilators? Because we are not on a ventilator. How are you a severe case? For the rest of the world, that's the measure. You look at coronavirus numbers, the global numbers of the 1,617,226 currently infected people, 1,562,999 are mild. They're mild. There is no risk to death. There is only 54,000 people in serious or critical condition. During the Spanish flu, it was killing 54,000 people a day. We have equated this virus with things that it is not and have created a panic situation in this country, scared the crap out of people, and have allowed the government to do as they please. And I think that it is time to bring the people back to rational conversations. Let's do our closing comments in order of appearance. Now, Philip Franco, give me your closing comments.
Yes, I just want to reiterate that the reason for lockdown measures is to flatten the curve. It is not to eradicate the virus, nowhere in the world. It's to flatten the curve so the health institutions could handle the caseload. That is the reason for it. We are flat. Why are we tightening our lockdown measures at there? That is one. Right? The other thing is that we have to realize that not just this government, but governments all over the world have the same problem. This dictatorial democracy that I tell you, it don't work for me. I don't know who it's working for, but it don't work for me. I want participatory democracy. I want where I could have a say beyond a vote every 5 years. I want to have a say in decision making, right, and policy making. I don't want kings. Who wants kings? Well, go somewhere and get kings. I don't want kings, right? I want to play a part, and I want decision making to be influenced by capturing the best ideas from the population, right? We need systems and the technologies available, and we can capture the best and greatest ideas from the citizens of the nations of the world, and not have to just listen to one dictatorial leader and follow that to whatever destruction he will take us down.
Absolutely agree. Thanks a lot, Philip Franco. And we will be in touch with you during the week here.
Thanks for the opportunity, Philip.
Thanks a lot for joining us, buddy. Devon Maraj, give us your closing comments. Take as long as you need.
Well, Philip, I think we have to be very wary of the creeping dictatorship that is happening very almost on a daily basis on television, unfolding before our eyes. We saw the government choosing 4 security firms to police communities. Without any reason, without any call from communities that they needed to be patrolled, and with a public outcry, it was scrapped. The Prime Minister then told us that was based on race that he decided to scrap it. I don't know what study he did, who he polled, who he ain't polled. Similarly, a facility in Grandy was chosen without rhyme or reason. And again, when asked about it, the report coming in 24 hours, 48 hours, we don't know how an expenditure was running. We are seeing a disturbing pattern of autocracy by the Rowley administration, which previously had the parliament to check it. We don't have a parliament operating. The opposition is restricted by what they can and cannot do. And for that reason, we should be calling for the immediate convening of the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago. We have the technology to do it virtually. And if the Prime Minister could meet the Vice President of Venezuela in person, and he has regular press conferences, cabinet, post-cabinet, with more than 15 people at any given time, I don't see why they can't convene Parliament, because Parliament under the Public Health Ordinance is deemed as an essential service. So if the framers of the ordinance deem it as an essential service, why is it essential if we don't use it? So clearly, we could do it physically or virtually, but the government needs to be held accountable, and we as citizens should be clamoring for them to account for us, their expenditure and their actions and the legality of those actions.
Thank you, Devon. Thanks for joining us.
I want to endorse what Devon just said, but I would just say that this is not a creeping dictatorship. It is an actual dictatorship. This is a dictatorship. They are governing without parliament. Right? They have taken $20 billion and are spending it as they wish. They are making laws. Sometimes in the press conference itself, the Prime Minister changes his mind and makes a decree. This is a dictatorship. It's not a creeping dictatorship. It is an actual dictatorship, and it needs to stop right now. We need to call Parliament. We need to stop it right now. And the way this is being perpetrated upon us is by manipulation of our psychology. It's fear, right? So we have these 8 deaths, and as you rightly said, Philip, 2 really from our own situation. And again, this is, and the way you manipulate fear, the way you manipulate people is through ignorance and lack of education. You know, the top 50 causes of death in Trinidad and Tobago. When we hear about the death, everyone is, going, they're in shock and they're frightened. But let me tell you, for the last statistics we have, and this is on the World Health Rankings, Trinidad and Tobago total death by cause. Number one is coronary heart disease, 2,436 deaths in 1 year, right? Diabetes mellitus, 2,009 deaths in 1 year. Stroke, 1,168 deaths in 1 year. Violence, this was 446 deaths in 1 year. Then you have influenza and pneumonia, 383. You go down the list to the top 50. At the number 50 is meningitis at 16 deaths per year. So this would not even reach in the top 50 deaths, right? Yet we are shutting down our economy. People are losing their livelihoods. Businesses are shutting down. People who can't live from day to day, who have trouble day to day, let alone week to week or month to month, their future, they are suffering. People are hurting. And people who can afford to stay 2-3 months based on their saving are telling these other people that you have to stay home and you can't cut grass or make some macaroni pie and sell or whatever it is they do. I just can't describe the anger I feel from this. This is so unjust. We need to do something. If calling a parliament is one of them, getting the medical fraternity to speak about what the truth of this is and get away from this fear. We need to open up. We need to open up back as a society, get our lives back, and get our democracy back.
I said that this was your closing comments, but I need to ask both of you a question, and that is, why is the opposition sitting back and allowing this to happen? Why doesn't the opposition initiate a court action to force the government to convene parliament?
You need to ask the opposition, man.
No, but
I can't speak for the opposition.
they're going to watch the panel tonight and say, Philip, join the UNC. Come on, man. That's nonsense we have to put up with.
I can't speak for the opposition.
No, but I'm saying.
I would say, honestly, this fear has infected the opposition as well. Right?
Kirk, was that Devon?
Yeah, you had him releasing online what day it was, Philip. You gotta ask him that.
Ask him that. I tried to see if I can get
Rural couple. Yeah, Rural before. You have all the Hefes in there. You're asking them, me and Turk, who is the least of the apostles. You're asking.
It's not about the apostles. It's about you having the information about how this thing's supposed to work, and maybe we should write the opposition.
No, the opposition have information too. I don't ever underestimate the opposition. They have about 1 million doctors with them. Cook is one.
Gentlemen, I want to say to both of you for coming on the show on such short notice. It was beautiful and brilliant as normal, and we're going to have to do a follow-up. If not, it might be a series until we get our democracy back, because people need to understand that they have a responsibility to this democracy to speak out and to stand up and demand that the government observe the Constitution and to function lawfully. I want to say thanks very, very much to both of you for joining us. And that's where we leave it tonight. Trinidad and Tobago. Special thanks to Dr. Kirk Megu, Devon Maraj, and Philip Franco, who dropped what they were doing and rushed in here to have a conversation about what seems to be a galloping dictatorship. Dr. Kirk Megu believes it's already a dictatorship. Today, the government restricted your civil liberties and your human rights a little more without justification, without cause. And if they cannot explain, because I don't own a hardware, and this has to be the line in the sand. If you cannot justify why my rights have been further eroded, then we have to make as much noise or more as we made when they tried to take public funds and hand to friends and financiers in those security contracts that Stuart Young said he didn't know the people felt safe. So he who organized it, cancel it before his boss tell him, you lie. You really cancel it because the people was talking about race, and all of it is nonsense, and all of it is manipulation. And this government, I think, all of the extra time that we were giving them, I think they've run out of it. They've used up their welcome. Real citizens, patriots of this country, have to start weighing the evidence. Stop functioning unfair. We are not doing the right thing, and we should. At this point, the government was supposed to start to relax restrictions and test the water. And that would have been done by giving people access to a little more freedom to go about their business and restart the economy. This announcement today, shutting down the hardwares, creates a bigger problem than it solves, and it is a complete abuse of office. We need to deal with that. We're going to hear on Plain Talk, and a big shout out to Satish Ramsaran and the PEP Media team. Satish was busy when we called him to say, look, we want to do the show, and I know he's going to get licks from his wife tonight, and Satish, I apologize, brother, but you dropped what you're doing and you came to do the show for us, and we want to say thanks a lot. We at the Progressive Empowerment Party, and I can only speak for us, but all the good people and the bright and brilliant intellectual professionals that you see that come on this show, they come on this show because they see that they have an actual opportunity to speak out without being muzzled, without being fettered, without being told what they could speak about. And this is a real opportunity for Trinidad and Tobago to be informed. Use it, share it, spread it, send it to everybody you know. Let's have the conversation. It's not about who you like. It's about who's working for you. Until tomorrow, stay safe, Trinidad and Tobago.